This is the Bureau of Lost Culture. I'm Stephen Coates.
I'll say goodbye to you, mother. I hope one day that I'll come back home. Father, please don't watch me go, 'cause I'm old enough to know. I walk along the street I love, the street we played in as friends before. This time it seems the street's not the same as we make our way to war.
This episode is a little different. As war breaks out in Israel and maybe dominates the news, let's not forget the tragedy of Russia and Ukraine. As regular listeners know, I've got a long countercultural history with Russia and friends in both countries, although many of them are now living in kind of exile. Turkey, Lithuania, Estonia, Georgia, even Argentina. Some even here in the UK. Others can't leave or don't want to. These are their countries, whoever is ruling them and whoever are fighting. So I'm pleased that this episode, my guest is a deeply countercultural Russian who now lives in London and who's made a project for those that he has had to leave behind or can no longer reach in person in both countries.
Нарешті буде той ранок, життя прокинуться в одну і ту ж саму мить. І хтось прошепоче, йдемо додому, мерщій. Промоклі до нитки серця впадають у бездонне Дніпро.
He's perhaps the biggest name in Russian rock music, famous as the leader of the band Aquarium, famous throughout Russia itself and out of Russia as the huge and growing number of Russians who live abroad are called. He is now listed as a foreign agent in his homeland, basically an anti-patriot, a traitor for speaking out and for criticising Russia's war. Aquarium were pioneers of the homegrown rock scene that emerged in the USSR in the 70s, detailed by our mutual friend Artemy Trotsky, now also declared a foreign agent, in his book Back in the USSR, The True Story of Russian Rock. And in the 70s, Aquarium were playing kind of prog and folk rock, but in the 80s, they became the kind of Pied Pipers of perestroika through those incredible changing times. Their leader, Boris Grebenshikov, now lives in London, and he's put together a compilation aiming to help children who are victims of the war in Ukraine. It consists of previously unreleased tracks by a star-studded ensemble, including Dave Stewart, the Eurythmics, Jethro Tull, Marianne Faithful, Marc Almond, Crowded House, and others. And we're going to hear a selection of the album throughout our conversation, a conversation which takes in all sorts of stuff from Boris's childhood right the way through to the present day. Hello, Boris. Welcome to the Bureau of Lost Culture.
Good afternoon. Pleasure to be here.
We're going to talk about your latest project in a second, but one thing which I thought of today in terms of lost culture is that, they say 1 million people have left Russia since the Ukraine conflict started.
Yes.
A lot of those people are people like you who are involved in culture and the arts. And there's a lot of people who have stayed who are kind of internal exile in Russia. And it did strike me that Russia itself is losing its culture.
It's not the first wave of that so-called immigration. The same happened 100 years ago and was happening all over the time. I think when some people are ready to be let out of a cage, it happens. And so if you look at the examples of what exactly happens, we've got Glazunov, we got Rachmaninoff, we got a lot of famous composers and singers. They were coming from Ukraine or Lithuania or whatever, like Gershwin, like Copland. all of them. So it's Russia's gift to the world.
Right. So there's how many Russians that are living outside Russia now? There's a lot. Okay.
Yeah, that makes playing concerts very easy, because I go out on a stage in Portugal or Spain or France or anywhere, States, and it's the same people. I played to them 2 years ago. I played to them in Russia.
Outer Russia, as they call it, right? So there have been these waves of cultural emigration, and even before the war, some of the great Russian singers, Lyshenko, a Ukrainian by birth, of course, but, these emigre singers living in exile, and their culture coming back into Russia as well. And do you consider yourself at the moment in exile?
Not at all, because I wanted to move over here for a very long time. It was just physically hard to do.
Right. The reason that we're here is to talk about this album that you have put together, produced. It's called Heal the Sky. It's an album in support of Ukraine, and you've brought in an extraordinary collection of artists. Dave Stewart, your friend and long-time collaborator, Jethro Tull, Marianne Faithful, Richard Thompson, Marc Almond, Clannad. The list goes on. This is your gift. Is it cultural response to what is happening? Can you tell us a little bit about why now?
A lot of people in Ukraine, whom I know for a very long time, are writing to me all this time since the beginning of the war. And from their letters, I can figure out that they feel sort of, forsaken. They don't understand why Russia, who was supporting them with, music, this, that, and suddenly, instead of music, they're getting rockets, they got shelling. They don't understand, because they're still speaking the same Russian language. I mean, people living in Odessa, they never spoke Ukrainian, most of them.
Right.
I mean, now they have to. And I understand them. Because it was, this war is an act of treachery, first. And I thought that the fitting thing to do would be to get all the musicians whom they are listening to for last 50 years, and get all the musicians to say, we are with you, we care about you, we never forgot you, we are with you, we support you. The reaction of Ukrainians, they were saying, if such an album would come out, it will really help us, in a moral way.
We're going to come back and talk more about that, just the process and also the guests on it. And I wanted, first of all, to sort of go back in time and to talk about your life and times in the counterculture, the Russian counterculture. You were born in 1953. You grew up in what was then Leningrad, now St. Petersburg. Famously, of course, by 1972, you found Aquarium. But I wanted to talk about the time in between. So can you tell us a little bit about your childhood and what like growing up in the late 50s, early 60s? What was your family like?
I remember around 1960 or 61 thinking how lucky I am, because I'm living in the best place in the world, and we have a lot of corn to eat, and we have food, we have everything, and we have rock and roll, and we have the very beginning of rock and roll, like Elvis and all this stuff. And I was thinking, I am lucky. I grew up, and I had a choice between reading the Soviet children's literature and Robert Louis Stevenson, Walter Scott, everything. So of course I chose that, Three Musketeers. So I never thought that I'm living in a separate universe. No, that was my world. Right. Jules Verne, Dumas. That was the world I wanted to inhabit. Then I realized that, there is a wall that I cannot go beyond, but okay, let's see what we can do with that.
In the 60s, where were you getting, where were you hearing rock and roll? Where were you hearing that music?
Radio.
Through the radio, right.
It was BBC, mostly Voice of America, even Radio Luxembourg. They were playing unusual stuff. When something filters through the BBC or Voice of America or whatever, when it's already established. But Radio Luxembourg was playing wild shit.
Love it. You're growing up in the 60s. In my experience, spending time in Russia, Leningrad is very different than Moscow. It always felt to me somewhat more like Liverpool in a strange way. on the edge, separate from, the capital, the place, a port, a place where things come and go. It's on the edge. And I'm guessing also easier maybe to receive the radio there as well. But it's always been a place where things seem to happen culturally, the underground.
We all remember that it was built as a window to Europe, as Peter the Great used to say. So it still remains sort of that. Because Moscow is a place where people fight for power within Russia or within their own little home or whatever. But they fight and fight and fight. And they are very power conscious and very socially oriented, and they know the fashionable place and they have to go there. There's no fashionable places in St. Petersburg. You just go where you can hang with your friends.
As you grew up, by the sort of mid-60s, you're a teenager, I guess, and you've heard the rock and roll, you're reading these books, so your imagination is quite alive. Tell us how the beginnings for you of actually deciding that, okay, I'm going to make a band, I'm going to create something, I'm going to start playing.
It happened by itself because my grandmother taught me to play gypsy guitar, which means 3 chords. A minor, D minor, E. That's it.
That works.
So I could sing thousands of songs from the word go, because all Russian songs are built on basically these 3 chords. And then I started to understand that probably the Beatles are playing slightly different chords, because it's not quite that. So I started to try to find what exactly they were playing, Then I realized it must be 6-string guitar, not the gypsy guitar. So I have to take off 1 string.
Now the gypsy guitar's got an extra string.
Yeah, right, different tuning.
Okay,
it's an open tuning.
Right, okay.
So I was figuring all this out, and and then there's another guy who plays the guitar. So I go and see, like everybody else, like what kind of chords he is playing, and okay. I got that. And then you got another friend who plays bass guitar, and you go, well, shall we play together? That's the usual stuff.
You playing your own material, or are you playing covers of Beatles and other rock and roll songs?
When I first entered the mathematical school, because I was supposedly good at mathematics, on the first day, I see the guy who's got long hair, and he's got button-down flowered shirt, and I go, So we get together, and he says, I've got Led Zeppelin. What is Led Zeppelin? I never heard them. And he said, okay, come over to my place. So we went, after 1st of September, we went to his place, and I listened to first Led Zeppelin, Stand Up, Jethro Tull, 10 years after. And I went, this is a guy I want to hang with. So I played him some of my stuff. And then he said, my friends are playing in this band. Would you like to sing with them? I said, sure, of course. So I went, met them, and we started to play dances, high school dances.
Right.
And then I realized that if I want to write the songs, they need to be written in Russian language. You remember when John Lennon, his first album came out, the one that has Mother. So almost last song, was God. And I thought, this is the kind of emotion that I want to reach. But to reach this, you have to sing in your own language so people will understand you. So, all right, I will stop writing in English, which I tried, and try to write songs in Russian. And everybody was saying, you don't do that. Russian language and rock and roll, they're mutually exclusive. You cannot sing rock and roll in Russian. I said, oh yeah, okay. And that's what started me off.
In the 40s and through the 50s, you've had the very, very difficult times with Stalin, and Khrushchev has come. There's the so-called thaw. Things got, culturally opened up a bit easier. Brezhnev comes in, it kind of closes down a bit. But what was the culture in terms of being able to play concerts, but play gigs, play your own songs? How did you manage to do that, given that what you were doing was not kind of like official in any way? How did it work?
Somehow I was lucky enough to do all the things that officialdom could not accept. So I was thrown out of that and this, and this place, and this place. And it was like, if they're throwing us out, then we're doing something right.
Right, that was your way of measuring whether you're doing something right.
Yeah, but and it went on.
I spent a lot of time, researching about, forbidden music and the underground in Russia, and I think particularly for younger people here, it's difficult to imagine a situation when music, and we're talking about rock and roll and pop music here, is censored or controlled. Freedom of expression, say writing your own songs, is not something that can be done officially, So for you were always right from the beginning part of this, let's call it the underground, right? And in Leningrad. And was there a community of like-minded people, your peers, fellow musicians and friends?
Well, in theory, yes. In practice, the difference between UK and Russia, for example, is that in UK people are polite toward each other, and they kind of try to accept what you're doing, or at least try to understand. In Russia, the first thing is fight with, you find a friend, fight with him. So, you invite a couple of friends to your home, and 10 other people turn in, and they said, "We're your guests as well. Where's the food? Where's the drink? Come on." Well, it happens everywhere, but in Russia it's a bit like this in everything. But I was lucky enough to find great people who were books. I mean, we understood each other. So we listened to the same music, we drank the same shit, and smoked the same shit, and did everything. And it was wonderful. And, actually, I remember Lou Reed was telling me, I envy you because when everything that you do is outlaw, that puts you in a rather interesting position.
Because you're automatically an outsider.
Yeah, of course. And
by definition.
You accept it from the word go. And you go, yes, I am an outsider. Let's see how I will survive and how you will survive. So it was always a matter of not really fighting for your way out, because there's no way out. You are within a concentration camp. But you fight for the right to be living the life that you think as the life.
There was no way out. So there was very strong constrictions, acts as a sort of creative engine in some way. Actually, in your case, and in the case of maybe some of your community from that time, it actually pushed you in an aesthetic, cultural direction, right?
Well, unfortunately, we didn't know how to play. So aesthetics was something very, very, very
You could
far
play
away
3
from us.
chords.
Well, yeah, I learned 6.
Because
I'm still playing them.
listen, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Exactly. You see, when you listen to the best of music, somehow you get tuned to that frequency. And you may be playing something much more primitive, but the frequency is still the same. And that's what I've learned from music. Because music was my only teacher.
Right.
It still is.
Right.
Our ship, she's ready to sail away, and it's come, my sweet comrades, o'er the stormy sea. Our snow white wings are all unfurled, and soon we'll swim in a watery world. Farewell, sweet Dublin's hills and braes, the Killarney mountains and silvery streams.
So Aquarium has been described, this is the band that you formed in 1972 with your friend George, as a postmodern theatrical endeavour, including poetry and music.
Pure bullshit. I was thinking only about writing good songs. George was like theater inclined, and all of our big band of friends, they wanted to do something, and you can only be You can have 4 people on the stage, not more. And what do you do with 25? So they form a theater,
Right.
and you play to the theater, and then you quarrel with a director whom you invite to be serious, and he says, your music is shit. That was an interesting conflict for just adding to creativity, I think.
Mm. Where did you play? Where was it possible for you to play?
Apartments of friends over friends over friends, because we didn't have official papers to play in public places. Well, we could, sometimes people would fake them, but it was rather hard. And because we didn't have any amps, or even good guitars or whatever, or drums, so we couldn't pretend that we're like the real band. But when you play at somebody's apartment and you have a flute and a cello, an acoustic guitar, and you can sing, that's all right.
The apartment gigs, I mean, that, again, for people here, that's a sort of something we didn't have at all.
Yeah,
So-
it's purely Russian invention. Soviet.
Soviet invention, yeah. One thing is that there aren't that many apartments here still. Most people live in houses, but actually, yeah. So you can actually go and have a gig or a party. We're more familiar with having a party in an apartment. Yeah.
But it was a party, but the party was that we were playing and people would listen for 2 hours, and then we'll get drunk together and they will ask questions. So how did this, what about this? What about that? You go, let's have a drink. Okay.
So you're playing apartments and, you're writing more material. When did you first start to record things? Because again, there is no way that you can officially record things, so you...
Oh, it was the dream that could never come true. To find yourself in a real studio. Oh, come on, I would kill for that. And but we started recording as soon as we formed as a band.
Right.
It was 72, summer of 72 when we got together, and then in 73 we started recording the first album. It was rather unlistenable, but create. And then we just learned how to do this. There was this very strange thing. People in Russia, they never thought of music as something that should be recorded. You go on stage, you play your stuff, you're surrounded by girls, you get some money for vodka or whatever. I mean, that's all right. Why should I record an album? Because you want to preserve your songs.
Right.
Why should I preserve myself? I mean, they will remember the guy. And so I was talking with all of my friends, a lot of people in the band, saying, you should record what you're doing. And they would say, even Makarevich, who is a very intelligent person, time machine, he would say, I don't know. We're all right as we are. Gradually, they started to understand. But we were the first band in Russia who would record something that might be called an album, and then we'll do the photo cover, and then we'll sit at home, take a glue, paste the photo to this little box with a reel-to-reel tape, and sell it.
So, I mean, listeners might know I've talked many times about my project, that music created on X-rays, and of course on an X-ray you can fit 3.5 minutes.
Yeah.
So the X-ray era dies out in 64 and replaced by, we call it magnetic stat, but this era of underground recordings on reel-to-reel tape.
Yeah.
You get the reel-to-reel tape, it comes in a box, and you were making each one individually, copying each one individually, making the covers yourself, right? Making your own album, basically.
Yes.
It's very punk, actually.
It is.
Proto-punk, I suppose.
It was. So when punk came, I thought, okay, you got that too.
One of the things which I came across in my research is I met people who told me that they made their guitars electric by stealing things from phone boxes.
Ooh.
I'm not very good with electronics, but they tell me that they would use the inside of the telephone to make a pickup on the guitar.
I never heard about that. That's
Right.
ingenious.
Come on, you guys are so ingenious, right? Do all sorts of mischief.
No, it's not a mischief. You're trying to live a normal human life.
Where were you getting your instruments, and where were you getting the recording machines? And
We started to record really professionally in 1980.
right,
After playing the infamous Tbilisi festival, being thrown out of everywhere. And but at the same time, God have given us a great gift in the shape of a human individual who was running a special lab for young pioneers to learn how to record. And he had a decent, 2-track machine, but microphones, he got microphone stands, and he got everything.
Right.
And he came to me and said, we can do something together. I said, yeah, of course. Let's do it. Autumn of 1980, we started a new era. We started to record really professional albums. Not very high quality, but still. And then the rest of the bands in St. Petersburg, they woke up and said, we can do that too. And this guy was working 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, without visiting his home, for 5 or 6 years, probably, before KGB caught up with him.
Father's hunting in the forest, mother's cooking in the home. I must go to fetch the water till the day that I am grown. Till I'm grown, till I'm grown. I must go to fetch the water till the day that I am grown. Then I will have a handsome husband and a daughter of my own. I'll send her to fetch the water. I'll be cooking in the home, my own home, my own home. I'll send her to fetch the water. I'll be cooking in the home. Then I will have a handsome husband and a daughter of my own. I'll send her to fetch the water. I'll be cooking.
In those years between 73 and 80, when you start, you're recording yourself, this DIY thing we talked about, and you're playing apartment gigs, right? But more and more people start to know about you. You're distributing the albums that you're making on magnetic tape.
Yeah,
right?
but not distributing is a very strong word, probably, because we would do like 7 or 8 copies, and then it would be copied each one of them.
Right.
So when people, 20 years later, people in Vladivostok or somewhere like far away, they would tell me, I first got your tape, and it was like 8th generation tape. Of course, I couldn't hear anything, but it was freezing.
Just tell us a little bit about your life apart from music. So, how do you survive? Because Soviet Union, everybody's got to have a job. How did you manage to combine, your artistic life, your musical life, with staying alive, eating, living somewhere?
Well, I graduated from a university in mid-70s, and then I went to work as a sociologist, Leningrad University then. Scientific Institute was famous as a place where nobody does anything because nobody knows what sociology is. So I started the underground fanzine.
Right.
So I had fun all the time because you wake up, you go to work, and then you spend next 8 hours doing nothing.
Right.
So you can, write songs or translate things or read Tolkien or whatever.
So you've got a job, but the job
was doing nothing.
So you could really get on with your life, right? When you're doing the job. So Artemi told me that people would work as caretakers or any sort of job that they just to make enough money so they could live there.
Night watchman, caretaker, yeah.
He told me also something interesting about when he first started to play. He called them DJ sets, but he had to get the authority to He had to tell them which songs he was going to play before he played them. Once he said he's going to play A Day in the Life by the Beatles, but they asked him to explain what the lyrics were about.
Well, he is a genius, so he explained.
I said, listen, can you tell me what the lyrics are about? The other thing that Artemy said is that it was the birth of a homegrown Russian rock. So
Yes.
whereas in the 60s, you know, you maybe got kids who were playing Beatles songs, playing Western rock. You, in particular, and Time Machine, Auction, is these bands that came for the first time. There was this culture which was a Russian rock culture, which was distinct.
There was 4 or 5 or 6 individuals all over Russia who would write the songs. And the same thing was happening with Bardik movement, 10, 20 years before us.
Right.
But people like Vysotsky, Akudjava, Klyachkin, Kukin, or Anna-Vela Matveyeva, I mean, they always knew who's doing what. I was totally amazed. Klyachkin, who was one of the best, one of the most melodic guys in the Bardik movement, he would come to my parents' home because, well, we got, friends of a friends of a friends. And he would sing and he would say, well, I've heard that Vysotsky have written a new song, this is it. And he would sing everything, He would sing a new Galich song, a new Vysotsky song. Like, everybody knew what is going on, and that was totally amazing. What we were doing, it was so exotic. It was so unusual. And it was so freeing, actually. Because you are living in a place whose laws do not let you live, but you find a way how to get around these laws. So you're living an outsider life, and this outsider life is amazing. It was an adventure.
An adventure, right. Let's forward wind the magnetic tape to 1980. So Artemy, first public Russian rock critic, and he's involved with the Tbilisi Rock Festival. Now, this is quite a significant thing because this festival, right, it's like the state have to acknowledge that young people like this music, and whatever they do, they can't stop them listening to it, they can't stop them listening to the radio, they can't stop them enjoying it. So they sort of allow this festival to happen. Is that the case?
Almost. I think that we tend to think now of Russia, Soviet Russia, as the unit. But, Georgia was one thing, and Estonia was another thing, Lithuania was a different thing. And nobody trusted Moscow. So they all tried to do something of their own.
Right.
So they said, probably the guys in Georgian Communist Party, they said, well, Moscow doesn't allow us to do that, but we'll do it anyway. And so they did that, and it was actually the first official rock festival. They had something like 4 years before this in Tallinn, in Tartu. It was amazing.
You played there. Famously, your performance is described as a riot, but it sort of creates a huge energetic buzz, put it that way, in the crowd. Can you still remember it? I mean,
absolutely. Because Artemy was drunk. And he broke my guitar.
What? He didn't tell me that. Okay.
So right before I go on stage. So I had to borrow somebody's guitar. So I go on stage with the guitar that I don't know. And it's totally different. The sound is different. Everything is different. Okay, what do I do? So we had to compensate for that with a rather energetic performance. So I became a forefather of Russian punk. Which is unexpected, but
then what happens is that the officials who've put this festival on are shocked, frightened possibly about the reaction in the audience and what's going on. The KGB make a report about you. You get sacked from your job.
Well, actually, it was much easier. The chief of the Georgia Philharmonic, he wrote a letter to Communist Party in Leningrad saying Grebenshikov and his people, they violated all possible laws and they were doing like anti-Soviet agitation and like I was like, really? So I was thrown out of everywhere. Right. That freed me, for 2 days. I was like really despondent, thinking, everything is over. My wife's family have thrown me out and I have no future. And what do I do now? And then on the third day, I realized they gave me the best present anybody could give a person. They totally freed me from any obligations towards Soviet Union. Now I'm free. They paid for everything. Now I'm free. All right.
You're free.
Let's do some comics. Let's do a lot of things. Let's try new songs. Let's record new songs. And that's why exactly at the same time the studio appears. And we started recording all the songs. And it was like beginning of a new life.
Rain on the roof, blood on the floor. Your sister man won't come no more. No, I'll fight my corner. Oh, I'll fight my corner. Turn off the lights, turn on the tears. You'll wear a sign that's hung for years. Oh, I'll fight my corner. No, I'll fight my corner.
So you've been set free. You can write what you want. You can play. You play more shows, right? Was it possible now to play shows outside apartments as well?
Yes, because KGB officially formed a Leningrad Rock Club. They enable them to play concerts, public concerts. So you have to do all the songs censored, of course. But the person who was censoring them was wonderful, beautiful young lady, with whom we can always find a common language. So I would do this, let me change this word, and then when I sing what I want.
Just to explain that for people, so there's somebody sitting there through every performance to check what's being sung.
I think I would say about half dozen people on every hall, because it was an easy way to earn money, you know. You're a KGB, you are earning money by threatening children.
Right.
Then that's an easy way to make money.
Or in some cases, I think, an easy way to make money because you might be sitting there and enjoying it.
From my experience, I would say that it was slightly different, because the people who were overseeing, the KGB people who were overseeing the rock club, I don't think they listened to the music. I mean, they had fun striking terror in the hearts of young musicians and telling them, you never, never, never say that you're talking with us. You understand this. And everybody say, no, we're not talking with KGB, never. But you know that they talk.
So you mean there's people always telling stories and informing and giving information?
Yeah, but
all the time?
there was nothing to inform about.
Right.
That was a tragedy. If they could, sell government secrets or whatever, they didn't know government secrets.
When you were performing then, did you have to tell them what your lyrics would be?
Of course, because every time I would give them a set of the songs that we're going to sing, and every song was censored. And so I would explain that this phrase means that and that. I say, okay, right, go on. And if I sing something else, I mean, okay, I made a mistake, so what?
So they're sitting there with your lyrics and just checking?
Probably. There was a lot of people who didn't form, unfortunately. But, in France, during the World War, it was the same. Like everybody was informing on everybody else. So it's not pure the Russian, it's everywhere. So there was in every company, on every party, we would know that there is an informer, maybe two, maybe three.
So every party, every group gathering of friends,
every.
That one or two people there are going to be informing.
Yes.
Yeah, watching, see
At
what's
least
said.
there was a suspicion.
That atmosphere is very difficult for us to really feel here, because It would create such an amount of suspicion as well, wouldn't it, between people and, division, I suppose. But maybe that's the intention. Despite all those things that you've said, at least it did provide a venue for people to play and for people to enjoy music. Why did they start to take the pressure off? Why did they have the Leningrad Rock Club and maybe something in Moscow? Why did they, start to allow more festivals?
It was a natural inertia. It starts and suddenly it's bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, and even people in power, they would say, let them we'll allow that. Okay, if they want this, because it doesn't matter. I know for certain when we were allowed to release the first vinyl record in 1987, the logic behind that was somebody in Kremlin said, "Oh, I've heard this Aquarium, they released a record in Los Angeles by the friend of ours. Why don't we release it?" And they just said, all right.
Right, so the story behind that is that Joanna Stingray, right,
Yes.
had come to Soviet Union as a student, I guess, right?
Well, no, as a tourist.
As a tourist, right? And she'd met you guys.
Yeah, because we had a friend in common who informed her that there is this guy in St. Petersburg, in Leningrad, who knows music and that, he's sort of a local rock star, whatever. And she wanted to meet us.
She meet you, become friends, you start hanging out, right? She manages to stay around for a while.
And she was an angel. She was a saint. She was supplying all of us 3 or 4 or 5 bands, with microphones or strings, this and that. David Bowie sent me a guitar. She brought.
Joanna brought you a guitar from Bowie. Wow.
Fender.
Yeah, right, an angel. And also, in the opposite direction, she gets recordings of you and some of the others and smuggles it out.
Yeah.
Right. And puts this record out, Red Wave, right?
Yeah.
And it was the first time that
music was officially published outside of Russia.
Outside of Russia, right?
And it couldn't be published inside of Russia.
Right.
Officially.
Yeah. And then the authorities are somewhat embarrassed, are they?
Yes.
Because it's you don't even officially exist. You haven't got papers. There's no such thing as Aquarium. Right. Suddenly they find out that an album's come out in America, shock horror of all places, with your recordings on it. And, of course, so then they have to catch up.
Yeah. But first they stopped Joanna from going over to Russia. They've taken away her visa.
Right.
And she was broken-hearted because she was already in love with Yura, guitarist from Kino. But then they gave it back.
But you were then allowed to make a record officially, as it were. Right. So, and what was that like for you? So you can now go into a studio, you don't have to be looking over your shoulder and hiding and, this is...
No, unfortunately it was not that romantic. I went to Melody and said, well, if you're releasing our record, so let's talk about the studio, what songs we should record. They said, no, you don't understand. We don't give you the studio. We take your recordings and we choose the ones we like and we release it as an album. I said, what about releasing a new album? I said, no, we'll never let you do this. We don't waste money on that. We've just taken some songs from the albums that we already recorded underground, and they put it out officially. And it broke the record immediately. It was 5 or 6 million.
5 or 6 million.
And I got about 2,000 rubles from that. But,
so listen, artists, we always complain about record labels over here, but this is Melodia.
When we were talking with George Harrison, and he said, tell me about this recording. How much were you getting? I said, well, about 0.001 pence from one album. I said, I know the story.
Maybe it's like Spotify now, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I'm like most of us, most musicians, we do it for the love. So the fact that 5 million people have got your record is...
That's all we wanted.
That's what you wanted, right?
Because, the one thing that I really love about these times, that this guy, Andrei Trapila, who was recording all of these bands throughout all the 80s, he never got a single kopeck from that, not a single ruble, nothing. He was working for
the love.
Yeah.
Then it becomes a very special time, this 1980s, because you're free, you're making more music, and there's quite a lot of things happening in Leningrad. We're moving towards perestroika, and there's, people mentioned earlier, your friend Sergei Kuryakin, and, another extraordinary talent.
Amazing.
Tell me about Sergei.
In the very beginning of the 80s, I was looking for a piano player for one of my songs. So I asked around my friends, so who can you recommend? And everybody said, well, of course, Sergei. I've heard the name. I've heard him. I've seen him play in some band. I said, okay. And then he comes in, immediately it's like, let's do this. No, let's do this. All right, let's try this. And it was such an amazing, understanding from the word go. Let's have the biggest fun imaginable. And we were together like this for at least 4 or 5 years. He would laugh at all my romantic impulses. I said, this is too sentimental. Let's break it up. Let's put some wild shit in the middle of it. So, all right. Not just like Lennon would do with Paul McCartney's song.
Yeah.
He was wild, and but I know we understood each other.
Well, the gigs were these extraordinary, theatrical, crazy, insane circuses, right?
Yeah, yes. And he developed this unique band, the Popular Mechanics. That I don't think there's anywhere in the world anything like this was happening, because it was like totally outside the realms of the human brain or taste. It was beyond.
My name is Jethro, and I rock both great and small, and my neck shall pay for all when I die, and my neck shall pay for all when I die. I've 20 pounds in store, and that's not all. Oh, I've 20 pounds in store, and that's not all. Oh, I've 20 pounds in store, and I've killed for 20 more, and my neck shall pay for all when I die, and my neck shall pay for
Perestroika comes. It's the empire crumbles. This thing that you've grown up inside in a way, is starting to fall apart. And what was that like?
It was some of our most cherished and wonderful memories. Like on one concert we were playing, suddenly police have taken our guitar player, and then the cello player went to defend him. They've taken him as well. So I walked on stage and said that we're not going to play until our friends will be returned to us safely, unharmed. And it was like total silence. And then the security people start to look around, and they understand it, like 10 of them and about 400 other people. In 10 minutes, they were returned. The funniest thing that UB40 was, the band, they were in a hall at that time. Somebody brought them over as guests. And we started singing. All the bands came on stage, and we sang, I think, Babylon or something like this. And everybody stood up, and they were singing, and the security just ran away. The moment like this, you remember, you cherish it. We have won. And the same thing happened again, like in 2 months on a big gig. That was what Perestroika was about.
The power has shifted. How much do you feel that music and culture, what sort of part did it play in bringing about those changes?
Logically, it cannot be explained, but what I feel is that music, it works with the subconsciousness of people. It works with what they call soul or whatever. And I believe that the music of the 60s brought about the perestroika that was happening in the 80s. Because it started to change the hearts of millions of people.
You change hearts first, and then minds start to change. Yeah. The empire crumbles, the power shifts, more freedom. You went on. You came to the UK. You'd met Dave Stewart. You released Radio Silence. You came here, did shows and stuff. How did you meet Dave? And
I was totally in love with Eurythmics, spellbinded. And so I go to the States, at 87, and then we go to Los Angeles, and then suddenly my host says, Dave is across the street in the studio. I said, okay, can you introduce me? So we went to the studio, we did a little jam, recorded it, and then when CBS was asking, so who you want to produce the album? I said, Dave Stewart. Are you serious? I said, yes, I'm serious. And they asked Dave. Dave didn't want to do it, of course. And then Tommy Mottola talked him in. And then we became friends. And I spent 2 wonderful years with him. Mm-hmm. And we did pretty good album under the circumstances, at least for the person who never wrote in English.
And then he came to play in Russia as well.
Oh, yeah. This was all adventures.
Since then, Aquarium split for a while, and then you've made many albums since your amazing album Salt. You're off on tour next week. You're living in London. You made an interview about the war in Ukraine for the BBC. As a consequence, you've been fined by the Russian government. You've been declared a foreign agent.
Yes.
They're still at it, right? This is the same story.
I never changed, and they never changed. They're still the same people.
You've seen so much change, right?
Yeah.
You've seen
and it
so
always comes
many...
down to the same thing.
Right. This is it's mind-bending.
Yeah, it is mind-bending, but I think it always gives me a fresh point of view from which to write. Because every time I write a song, I would never expect to write it. I wanted to write something else. I wanted to write something gentle and kind and wonderful and positive. And instead of that, I'm getting this rather poisonous or bitter or whatever things. But and then I understand that I'm moving forward. I'm doing things that I never dreamt of doing before. So it's still all right.
It's still all right. Are you okay with being a foreign agent? Can you go back to Russia?
I'm afraid that there is a chance that if I go back to Russia, I may find myself in jail, because a lot of people from parliament are actively against me. But I do not recognize the right to declare me anything. They could declare me the Empress of Venus. So fuck them. I don't care. I am what I am.
Artemi also has been declared a foreign agent.
Of course.
You've probably got a lot of friends still, I guess, who are in Russia who haven't left or can't leave, possibly.
Yes, a lot.
Painful, isn't it, for them, the ones that can't leave or don't want, they don't want to leave, but are living in a kind of internal exile of not being able to speak what they feel, or maybe to play the music that they want to play, or write the plays for the theatre that they want to make.
Necessity to remain silent is a very dangerous disease. It eats you up from the inside. Really painful to think about all the people who are left in Russia and they cannot leave because they got parents or they got families or they got this and that, or they just don't know any language and they're stuck there. But they have to remain silent. When I look at it from here, from London, I go, oh, I wish I could help them somehow. I don't know how. But then I realize, back then in the 70s and the 80s, with all this security things and this and that, but I was having time of my life. So we got this black car standing in front of my door for 2 years. All right.
You mean people watching you?
Hello, you okay?
So you've done an artistic thing. Your response has been artistic with Dave Stewart. You've put together this album, Heal the Sky, and it's a collection of over 20 artists.
25.
25 artists who've given unreleased tracks, unreleased recordings some of them very famous. Some songs that are actually already been very successful. Crowded Houses, Don't Dream It's Over. You've written new stuff. Or are these people who are friends or that you've got connections with? Is that how you brought them to this project?
Yeah, when I thought about that I have to do something in the face of this war. What can I do? I cannot take, the machine gun and go and shoot everybody. They got enough of that. The only thing I can do is to try to help people inside Ukraine and Russia to understand that the world is with them. Nobody has forgotten them. The world cares for them. And so I decided to, call everybody I know. I said, do you want to be part of that? And fortunately, all of them said yes.
It's a massive album. I was very glad to see Marc Almond on there. I've done things with Marc, and of course he's a great lover of Russian music and toured Russia himself before perestroika. And Dave Stewart with you back as well. So after all this time, you're still doing stuff together.
Yeah, I saw him quite recently, and the wonderful thing is he didn't change at all. He's still absolutely the same as I knew him in the 90s.
We've also got the undertones. Lisa Gerard,
yes.
Steel I Span. It's crosses the cultural landscape, this record, right?
Steel I Span have given me probably the biggest gift I could expect. When I told them about the idea, I said, yeah, we got a track, but we would like you to sing. That was a kingly gift.
Jethro Tull, Marianne Faithful. She's amazing, right? So the album, it's coming out on digital platforms. All the proceeds are going to Children's Hospital in Ukraine. Thanks for all that, Boris. And we'll put show notes about the album. I just wanted to sort of ask you, do you have some optimism, some hope about change? You grew up in a context where maybe change seemed impossible, but it came.
The main thing is to understand how it can help people in Russia, in Ukraine, whatever, people who don't want to succumb to that tragedy.
Do you have some hope for them that actually things...
Now, from the history, we can take an easy lesson. Regardless of what wars are going here and there, the culture still goes on. We listen to Bach without thinking how many wars were being waged at that moment. What we are doing now, hopefully, may be in the same, not in the same league, but the same direction.
Boris Grebenshikov, thanks for coming to the Bureau of Lost Culture.
Thank you, it was a great pleasure.
Well, thanks to Boris and to Alex Khan, who helped put this conversation together, and of course the Soho Radio. You can support the Heal the Sky project by getting your copy of the album now. I'll put a link to that in the show notes, as I said. Thanks to you for listening, and to all those who filled in our questionnaire and written in. It's great to hear from you. Amazing number of suggestions and ideas. I'm going to be catching up with all my correspondence over the next couple of weeks, but keep it coming. We're going to keep it coming right the way through into our second century. That's coming up. In the meantime, let's finish with a song from the album that Boris put together with Dave Stewart. It's rather famous. I don't think I need to introduce it, but I look forward to seeing you round the bend, further down the road, next time for more tales from the underground.
There is freedom within, there is freedom without. Try to catch the deluge in a paper cup. There's a battle ahead, many vessels are lost, but you'll never see the end of the road while you're traveling with me. Hey now, don't dream it's over. Hey now, when the world comes in, they come. Through the war between us, we know they won't win. Now I'm towing my car, there's a hole in the roof. My possessions are causing me suspicion, but there's no proof. In the paper today.